Israel just struck Iran again. Explosions in Tehran, Tabriz, Isfahan. Asian markets tanked overnight. And Trump, he called Netanyahu personally and told him not to do it. Netanyahu did it anyway. When this war kicked off in late February, Trump said it would last 4 to 5 weeks. Netanyahu went on Fox News and said it definitely wouldn't take years, and it's not an endless war. Trump's timeline is gone. Netanyahu's is starting to look optimistic. There's been a ceasefire, technically, peace talks, kind of, a deal that's supposedly almost done, according to Trump, and missiles are still flying. So let's break this down. What's been happening lately? Where is this heading? And what it means for you? What led to this? By April, the initial phase of fighting had burned itself out enough for a ceasefire to take hold. The US and Iran agreed to pause. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman that a fifth of the world's oil normally passes through, was supposed to reopen as part of the deal. It didn't. Iran's Revolutionary Guards reversed course within 24 hours of declaring it open, and the strait has stayed effectively closed ever since. Right now, around 10 ships a day are getting through where normally 95 would. Thousands of tankers are sitting stranded in the Gulf. The reopening of that waterway is the central sticking point in every negotiation happening right now, and nobody's resolved it. Through May, the US and Iran were making real progress on a deal framework. Trump posted on social media that an agreement was largely negotiated and would be announced shortly. The plan being the strait reopens first, then nuclear talks follow. Iran's side came out and called the announcement incomplete and inconsistent with reality, which tells you everything about how these two sides communicate. Then, Israel started hitting Beirut again in early June. Iran pulled out of talks, and Trump publicly said the whole negotiation process was boring. His frustration clearly aimed at Israel for blowing up the table he was trying to set. Then Israel struck Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut's southern suburbs. Iran responded by firing around 10 missiles at northern Israel, the first time Iran had launched anything directly at Israel since the April ceasefire. No Israelis were hurt. Trump called Netanyahu immediately and told him in his own words, if Bibi strikes them back, it's just gonna keep going like the last 47 years or the last 3,000 years. Israel struck Iran anyway, overnight. Targets in western and central Iran. Iran fired a second wave back. Asian markets opened to chaos. Japan's Nikkei dropped nearly 4%. South Korea bled close to 9% at one point. The worst exchange of fire since the ceasefire. The bigger picture here is a three-way tug of war. Trump wants a deal because it would be the biggest foreign policy win of his presidency. Iran wants the war to stop because its economy is in free fall and its military has been badly damaged. And Israel wants to keep going because Netanyahu doesn't trust any deal that leaves Iran with any nuclear capability whatsoever. And because as long as there's a war, he's a wartime leader and not a defendant in court. Where is this going? Here's the honest version. The most likely outcome, call it around 50%, is exactly what you're seeing right now. A slow, grinding conflict with occasional bursts of violence. Neither side wants a full ground war. Iran can't survive one. The US doesn't want the cost or the body bags. But both sides have reasons at home to keep the pressure on. Netanyahu needs the war. Iran's new leader, Khamenei's son, who stepped in after his father was killed in the February strikes, needs to look like he's not losing. So this drags on indefinitely. Flare-ups scare markets. Things calm down, repeat. A real deal gets signed, maybe 20%. Trump's team and Iran have been negotiating a first step agreement that would pause the fighting for 2 more months, reopen the strait, and set up nuclear talks down the road. Vance said recently they're very close. The problem is neither side trusts the other. Iran's chief negotiator posted publicly that his country gets concessions not through talks but through missiles, and that Tehran has absolutely no trust in guarantees or words. Only actions matter. Iran has also watched the US attack it twice while negotiations were actively happening. Hard to blame them for being skeptical. Here's also the part nobody's really saying out loud. Even if a deal gets signed, the nuclear problem probably isn't solved. Iran still has roughly 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, one technical step below the level needed to build a bomb. All of that material is still sitting somewhere inside the country. One expert put it simply, before all the strikes, Iran's timeline to enrich enough uranium for a single bomb was 6 days. After all the strikes, it was exactly the same. The facilities got hit, the material didn't go anywhere. That's what Israel knows. That's why Netanyahu keeps going. Iran's regime collapses or fully surrenders, maybe 10%. The IMF projects Iran's economy will shrink by over 6% this year, with inflation close to 70%. An additional 3.5 to 4.5 million Iranians are expected to fall into poverty this year alone. Governments under heavy military attack from outside tend to get more hardline, not less. The protests earlier this year were massive and got crushed. The regime is hurting, not finished. Full regional war, 20%. The Houthis, the Iran-backed group that control much of Yemen, just announced they're considering blocking the Bab al-Mandab Strait. That's the narrow passage at the bottom of the Red Sea that ships use to reach the Suez Canal on the way to Europe. Blocking it would cause serious disruption to global trade routes. Iran also has armed militias it funds and supplies still active in Iraq. If Israel keeps hitting Lebanon and no deal comes together, something tips eventually. What does it mean for the world? This is where it hits home. When the Strait closed in March, the price of oil shot from around $70 to over $120 a barrel. Brent crude is the world's oil price tag. It's what sets the baseline for gas at the pump everywhere. The International Energy Agency called it the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Gas prices went up, grocery bills went up, petroleum goes into fertilizer, fertilizer goes into food, so an oil shock ripples into almost everything you buy. Economists estimated it added roughly 0.6 percentage points to US headline inflation. Doesn't sound like much, but on top of existing inflation, it's real money out of people's pockets every week. Prices pulled back through May, dropping nearly 19% for the month, mostly because markets got optimistic that a deal was close and the Strait might finally reopen. Then, this latest round of strikes hit and oil jumped back over 3% in a single session. That's the pattern. Every time talks look promising, prices ease. Every time missiles fly, they spike. The market is betting on whether a deal happens. There's also something most people aren't tracking. US crude exports have hit a record 4.9 million barrels per day, with buyers in Asia switching to American oil to replace what they can't get from the Middle East anymore. The war created a gap, and American producers are filling it. It's one reason the US domestic energy picture has held up better than you'd expect. The worst case is both choke points, Hormuz and Bab al-Mandab, blocked at the same time. At that point, oil probably hits $170 a barrel or more, and you're looking at what economists call stagflation. Prices rising while the economy slows down at the same time. The hardest combination to fix, and the kind that tends to flip elections. For most Americans, the short version is this. Every exchange of fire in the headlines has a direct line to what you pay at the pump and at the grocery store. The war feels far away. The bill doesn't. And what if US troops actually enter Iran? That video is on your screen right now. Thanks for watching.